Hello and Shabbat Shalom. Hope you are enjoying the end of your Friday and you will love the beginning of Shabbat for us this week as we enter the double portion of Tazria Metzora. Dun dun dun. Some people really don't love these portions. So we always joke in the rabbinic clergy community that the bar and bat mitzvah student who might get this week's Torah portion has some real work to do, since the topic is about menstruation, about purity, about skin disease. It's about gossip. So it is an interesting interesting set of double portions that are usually put together, and they are again for us this year. What's interesting is clearly I'm a rabbi, so I love Judaism, and I love Torah and the ability to teach Torah. Some weeks, though, and some constructs of how weeks fall are just really beyond genius. I mean, clearly the Torah is really great, but this week particularly, because last week we talked about the cleanliness of animals and kosher and unkosher animals. And now this week there is that sort of similar conversation about, are we acting in a kosher way? It's sort of in the same construct, and both have to do with cleansing and have to do with water. And we talked about mikvah last week, and so mikvah is very much apparent for us this week as well, because you need the mikvah to go through a cleansing process of being spiritually unclean to spiritually clean. That really is the water that is the means for you to be able to switch between those two. So Tazria, by the way, talks about this idea of impurity, and talks about this term of tzara'at, which sometimes is not, I wouldn't, it's the best word we have for it is leprosy, although I think it's not necessarily leprosy. It's some kind of a affliction. And some say it's directly from Lashon Hara. So essentially, when we say something bad about someone else, we can get tzara'at. We can get this sort of skin disease. So that's really a quick overview of what's in Tazria. Metzora is similar in terms of that leper concept, but also talks about the fact that the tzara'at can not just affect humans, but also your home and certain things in your home. It's kind of a weird and gross-ish Torah portion, but I'd love for us to think about a couple of things. First of all, there's a specific ritual necessary to transition out of the uncleanliness to a space of ritual cleanliness. There's a way in which you do so. It involves a certain procedure with spring water and an earthen vessel and a piece of cedar wood and hyssop, which we've talked about before, a bundle of hyssop, which we've talked about. And it also involves two birds. Very interesting ritual. All that, by the way, each piece connects to one part of how you transition yourself from not being in tzara'at to being cleansed from it. One idea of the words of the birds, by the way, is that the chirping should remind you consistently over and over as the birds chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp, that you should no longer speak Lashon Hara. You should no longer speak gossip of people. But on another side, I just want us to think about this, that last week we looked about the nuances between kosher and unkosher food. And this week it's not that much different, because we're looking at the subtle changes that we can make between being spiritually clean and spiritually unclean. Meaning, how can we act? What actions can we take in our lives that will keep us on the path of being spiritually clean? And I think that's what the underlying concept is of the Torah portion. And again, the construct, like I mentioned, is so clever that last week we hear about the kosher, unkosher animals, the idea of the water that will eventually be the mikvah. And now we definitely know that mikvah, that water, will be necessary for us to transition ourselves from if we may stray, if we may slander or gossip, then there is a way for us to get out of that. Not just, well, clearly ritually, but you have to also go and ask for an apology for the other person. That's obvious. But the ritual process is what we hear about in this week's Torah portion. So I invite us on this Shabbat to think about avoiding the necessity of getting tzarat, right? Because the idea is that possibly it comes from us speaking badly of someone else, even thinking badly of someone else. So I invite us on this Shabbat to take the deep breath for ourselves, but also find ways where we can no longer think badly of others, act badly towards others, gossip about others. That's just not what we do as a community. So I invite us to think about that on this Shabbat with these fascinating, very interesting two Torah portions that are bunched together of Tazria and Metzora. Services are not that far away. They are at 6:30, and then tomorrow morning, 8:30 for our service and Torah study. Look forward to seeing you all very soon. Shabbat Shalom.